Listen close and listen clear. You cannot stop me now.
As the world wrestled with the idea that Chris Benoit had murdered his wife and son before committing suicide, a preacher and former wrestler from Arkansas had his own more intriguing theory. Johnny Angel, the 80s journeyman, alleged that Kevin Sullivan, a cold-hearted Satanist, had carried out the gruesome murders and framed Chris to take the blame.
I will end your way of life that you know.
Sullivan's army of darkness drew great heat in the Bible Belt of Florida. Long before The Undertaker and his ministry were pushing the boundaries of primetime television, Purple Haze, The Lock, The Fallen Angel and others were pledging their souls to the Snake Master.
My bones, they've been taken ever since. I then realized they belong for one thing, to do the bidding for us.
The chained and beaten fallen angel was none other than Nancy, Chris Benoit's future wife, a young model at the time who had entered the business through the seedy apartment wrestling photography network. Before she met Chris, Nancy married Kevin Sullivan and became one of the premier female managers in pro wrestling. And according to some, the characters they portrayed in the arenas weren't that far from reality. In 1996, the couple were working in World Championship Wrestling. Sullivan had become the booker, the matchmaker and man responsible for the creative direction of the characters and storylines. In one storyline, Sullivan scripted Nancy to have an affair with Chris Benoit.
What's it like coming home at night to an empty house, Kevin?
Ironically, what started as scripted scenes for television soon became real. By the end of 1997, Nancy had divorced Sullivan, leaving him for the crippler. It was this, writes Johnny Angel, that gave Sullivan the motive to carry out the Benoit murders a decade later. He said a source close to him revealed that Sullivan is a high-ranking member of the Satanic Church. He says Sullivan threatened Benoit and told him he would kill him, and concludes that the police need to consider the possibility that Sullivan carried out these gruesome murders in order to have his revenge, which is what Satanists live for. Johnny Angel's theory has become quite popular on the internet. One video has 1 million views, and his article has been a talking point on many forums and websites. But is it really plausible? It's one thing to have an alleged motive, but what about evidence? Investigators have never treated the Benoit tragedy as suspicious. There has never been any evidence presented of another person entering the residence, and there is no eyewitness testimony or forensics linking Sullivan to the crime scene. Surely if this was a crime of passion, it would have taken place at the time of the affair, not many years later when everyone had moved on with their lives. Johnny Angel fills in this gap of logic by suggesting the 10-year span between Nancy's divorce of Sullivan and the murders is numerologically significant, though he doesn't say why. And technically speaking, the exact date of the divorce is unknown, so it's unlikely to have literally been 10 years to the day. So how significant can that really be? Claiming somebody is a Satanist based on an anonymous source and suggesting they carried out 3 brutal murders just because they were divorced once is not the kind of thing that stands up in a court of law. And outside of Hollywood and religious propaganda, Satanists don't even believe that God or the devil exists. they use Satan as a metaphor for their colourful form of atheism.
There are a lot of misconceptions about Satanism. I mean, the first thing to say is that it's specifically a modern phenomenon. Historically, modern means post-Renaissance. So it has its roots in literature. Characters like Lord Byron, later on, let's say, the decadents like Baudelaire, created an idea which is essentially a kind of Gothic militant atheism. There's a distinct difference between that and what you might term devil worship. Devil worship is the idea where you take a specific myth structure, Christianity, principally in this case, and you turn it on its head, and all of its heroes become villains and vice versa.
Je renonce à Jésus-Christ, à ses pompes et à ses œuvres, et je m'attache à Lucifer pour toujours.
Satanism's more of it's a lifestyle, a philosophy, it's all these different kinds of things. It's not really a belief system. Satanists, in any real sense of the word, don't believe in a literal Satan. The Satan of the Satanists is as real as things like market forces or public opinion, all these things that have a huge impact on the world but aren't really there.
If Kevin Sullivan was a member of the Satanic Church, there would be no reason for him to hide that fact. It's not a secret society, it's not illegal to be a Satanist, the Satanic Church is not a criminal or terrorist organisation. Being a Satanist has no more bearing on the Benoit case than if he was a Star Wars fan. In fact, one of their rules, as written in the Satanic Bible, is do not harm little children, which would counter the idea that he could have murdered Daniel. Other than Hulk Hogan in a sensational celeb magazine, nobody close to Nancy or Kevin have ever suggested that their characters were anything more than an entertaining gimmick.
Kevin Sullivan is a confirmed Satanist.
I don't think so. That's bullshit. How can a Catholic, Irish Catholic choir in Altamont be a Satanist? I never said I was a Satanist, and I've never been a Satanist. And again, if anybody takes this too real, it's fake! It's fake! I mean, did I ever have a problem? Yeah, I did have a problem in North Carolina, which is the Bible Belt of America, the most conservative place in the world, with Jerry Falwell, who wanted to make some publicity. Yeah. Other than that, no.
So who really is Johnny Angel, and does he have any credibility to be making these accusations? His real name is Johnny Lee Clary. Apart from having a modest wrestling career in the 80s, in which he never actually met Sullivan or Nancy, he proudly documents on his own website that he grew up in a racist household and joined the KKK as a teenager. He became one of the Klan's national figureheads and took part in sensationalist chat shows like Morton Downey Jr. and Oprah Winfrey.
May I suggest we throw their out of here?
At some point along the line, he had a crisis of conscience and now preaches the word of God while sharing his story. While there will always be unanswered questions about the Benoit tragedy, it's a shame that a baseless article written by a Klansman turned religious zealot has captured so many minds. With no physical or circumstantial evidence, I think it's time we gave the old Prince of Darkness a break.